Hi, Dr. John Woodall. Thanks for coming. You know, I want to suggest something to you if you're working with kids as a parent or teacher or a staff in a youth program, that you are the hope of those children. I mean that literally. You are the hope of those children. You know, kids have ideas about their strengths, but they don't really have them in a very realistic way. And they're trying to find a way to really believe that they can do something of value in the world, something good, that they can use their strengths for something good. But they don't quite believe it just yet. You're the one who helps them discover that and believe in it. And until they can discover and believe it for themselves, you carry their hope for them. You are their hope. So I want to talk a little bit about a framework that we can use that can help us be better at that we can be better as a bridge for a child's hope. You know, sometimes a patient will come to me in my work as a psychiatrist, and they'll be filled with despair about something terrible that's happened, and they'll feel completely without hope. And I'll find something in them that I think is really quite remarkable. Everyone has it. It's not hard to find if you look. And I'll say, you know, I understand why you're despairing right now. So
let me hope for you.
Until you can hope. We do that for each other all the time. Sometimes we're the one who needs hope. Sometimes we're the one who gives hope. So what we're going to talk about now is how we can facilitate that process of building each other's hope, especially with our work with kids. So what I want to talk about is how do we create the climate? How do we create the environment within which hope can grow? Earlier in another video, I talked about dignity, and I want to define again what I mean by dignity. By dignity, I'm talking about the sum total of a child's or of a person's strengths. All of their strengths. The ones they know about. I can lift weights, I can run fast, I can do math well, I can speak well, I can tell a good joke. All of these skills that they know about are part of their dignity. The other part of their dignity are the skills they don't know about yet. The things that have to be mined from them, kind of like gems from a mine. The sum total of all of these skills, these strengths, these assets, I call the child's dignity. And we all have dignity. We all have these strengths. So dignity isn't something we can lose. Dignity is something we can neglect. It's something we can disrespect, but we can't lose it. And no one can take it from us. They can disrespect our dignity, but they can't take it from us. So this is something we all need to learn over a lifetime, isn't it? So a lot of what education's about is mining these gems and putting them into motion, right? And helping the child direct that dignity towards a goal, towards something that they can derive meaning from, towards a purpose that they can hang their life on and say, yeah, that's what my life is for, and I'm using this dignity, these strengths, these skills to get there, right? And therefore I'll have a life of meaning, right? This is what we're all after. If we can mobilize a child's dignity and direct it towards a purpose that they can believe in and derive meaning from, we've succeeded in building hope in that child. All right, how do we create that context? The first is a child needs to feel that they actually have dignity. Most kids don't have any clue, any idea. They've never heard the idea of dignity mentioned in relationship to them. So what we want to do is we want to create a context within which these strengths, this dignity can emerge. If we think also about the way kids form cliques, little groups, one of the reasons they do this is it's to protect themselves. It's to protect the idea that maybe they might have strengths, but they don't want anybody making fun of them. They don't want to be ridiculed and degraded. So they'll create little groups within which, among other things, one of the reasons they create these groups is so that they can feel safe, that they know that within that group they're relatively safe. People will not humiliate them. So until we can create a context in which kids feel safe, they won't let go of the attachment to these sorts of groups. And what happens in these groups is that on one hand it's safe and it's healthy because kids can experiment and grow within those groups, but it also puts a lid on what they're willing to explore, what they're willing to entertain as being real and valuable in the world. So for instance, in the previous video we talked about weakened identities and rigid identities, that in response to suffering, kids will naturally fall into a weakened identity or a rigid identity. In the weakened identity, they might feel that there's no purpose in their life, that they really have no skills that are worth anything, they have no goal to which they can work towards. They feel unmotivated. And as a result, they feel listless and unconnected, isolated from others, and even alienated. Or kids who become rigid in their identification overinvest their emotional life in a particular group that they say it holds all of the good for them, whether it's a political party, a national identity, an ethnic group, a gang, a sports team, whatever it might be. So the point is that kids in both of these groups are helped in a way by having mutual support, but they're limited in that they're unwilling to explore the world beyond the limits of those two kinds of identities. So as a result, if we have a conflict come up in a classroom or in a community or in an after-school program or in a family, and kids are in these rigid and weakened identities, there's very little tolerance for difference. There's very little tolerance for uncertainty and for ambiguity. So as a result, on the one hand, kids will fall into despair and withdrawal, or they'll fall into wanting to fight over what they see as their rights, right? So the problem with these two identities is that problems never get solved. They're either totally ignored or they're made worse by conflict. So the very first thing we want to do in establishing this process of the Unity Project, the very first thing we want to do is create that bowl, create a context within which kids can explore new ways of being. It means we begin by an exploration through service or through transformation exercises. We begin a process where kids can discover strengths they didn't know they had. We do this in very fun ways. And what we find over and over and over again is when kids do this, they are naturally filled with delight, they're naturally filled with curiosity, they're naturally filled with interest and a desire to learn. So to learn about themselves, to learn about others, or to learn in school. So what we want to do is we want to create a context first in which kids can have the experience of a strength they didn't know they had. And we have to then do the next very important thing. We have to make sure that that stays safe, right? That the child feels that the exploration of their strengths is safe. And by safety, I don't just mean physical safety, but I mean respectfully safe. In other words, that they feel that their dignity is not going to be made fun of. This new strength that they've discovered isn't going to be made fun of. So the safety of respect, of dignity, is what I mean by safety. And if we can then do the next thing, which is keep it that way, so they can trust that it will stay that way. Safety, trust, the two essential ingredients to form the bowl. And then what we wind up seeing is that the kids are able to explore their strengths in a way that is free from the limitations of the weakened identity or the limitations of a rigid identity. And that now they can begin to not only see their personal strengths, but how their strengths complement others, or harmonize with the strengths of others, or are the same as the strengths of others, even though other things might be quite different. Their color of their skin might be different, their religion might be different, their ethnic background, national background might be different. These differences become less important and a humanizing process begins. So if we create this bowl, if we form this bowl of unity, founded on dignity and maintaining that in a safe way so that kids can trust that it'll stay that way, exploration can happen, and spontaneously we will see this spiral of learning happen, this spiral of growth, this spiral of motivation, this spiral of seeking purpose and moving towards it, this spiral of growth of activating our dignity and moving it towards a purpose. That's the first stage of the bowl we wanted to talk about, forming the bowl. There's 4 more to go. In subsequent stages, we'll talk about glazing the bowl, firing the bowl, reaching for the bowl, and using the bowl. So thanks for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you more later. If you have any questions, send them to me, and I'm happy to incorporate your questions into the next video. Great. Thanks again. Take care.